Now I will be introducing you to the concepts of flexibility in mass housing through a narrative of series of conversations in between an architect, developer and client in an Indian context. The scene begins in an architect's office. A developer comes to the office and asks for a housing scheme proposal on a regular site in Ahmedabad. He says he would like to see few iterations or concepts within 24 hours that are unique and have potential to gain profit and utilize maximum FSI and follow regulations. There has been some ongoing research in the architect's office about flexibility in mass housing, and the architect's team thought that this is the right opportunity for them to present those ideas to realize the potential in the Indian context. And the next day, the architect presents 5 different ideas related to the concept of flexibility in mass housing and starts explaining them to the developer in detail with some built examples. I would now play the role of the architect and explain you these concepts. First one is soft flexibility. In this approach, the designer or the architect works in the background and the user adapts the plan according to his or her needs. The designer consciously maximizes the capability of the space to have multiple different physical arrangements. For example, in the case of Le Marais by Bernard Cohn, the users had the freedom to choose or design their own house with no hard restrictions. And it involved a series of models of 1:10 scale where users interacted with the architect and involved in the design process. The construction had a square frame of 4.6 by 4.6 meter, and the design contained U-shaped beams which collects and distributes all the horizontal services which rise or fall through the hollow columns of 0.7 by 0.7 meters. And this entire 3D network allowed for kitchens and bathrooms to be located anywhere along these lines. The user is provided a catalog from which they can choose kitchens, bathrooms, partitions and even facades, which allowed for the soft flexibility in this project. Then next concept is hard flexibility. In this approach, the designer works in the foreground, giving the user a limited palette of options to choose from. The designer, these options are curated by the designer according to the needs of various types of families based on their size and use cases. Udayan housing by B.B. Doshi is one such example where the high-rise dwellings are designed based on the concept of unconventional stacking method, where there are 25 different possible variations within a single tower, and the clients are given a chance to choose the floor they want to live in and also the layout which they want to live in, according to which the developer would build each and every floor plate of the tower on the site. Slack space. It is a space where architect doesn't essentially define the configuration or the purpose in order to allow for multiple possibilities. And these slack spaces are not just any spaces, they are the spaces which are anticipated of potential occupation. For example, flat roofs or courtyards, communal stairwells with big landings and balconies. In the case of diagonal houses by Hertzberger, the stacked terraces and the internal balconies allowed for variable uses for users in different ways. And these slack spaces could either be used for communal or private activities, and one can even enclose it temporarily for private activities. Next is supports theory. In this approach, the whole dwelling is divided into 2 parts: the more permanent part, that is structure, and the more flexible part, that is infill. Usually, the structure is built in RCC and the infill is made using panels that are easily movable or changeable according to the user needs. In case of Nemesis housing by Jean Nouvel, except the location of the staircase and the service core, everything else is changeable as the user wish. As you can see in the images on the left, how users play an active role in adapting the houses and to personalize the spaces in order to prevent the uniformity or the rigidity in the atmosphere of the building. Here, the internal walls are lightweight and made of modular panels, which can be easily movable even after once the user occupies the space. The next concept is open building. In this concept, this concept views the built environment as an ever-evolving product of an ongoing design process, and it is primarily based on the supports theory. And it aims to create a method where residents have the spatial flexibility in housing and the ability to control or modify the built environments. It considers the potential changes or adaptations of the building during the lifetime of the building itself by accommodating technological advancements of future. Primary support structure housing kit in London is one such example where it is trying to do the mentioned things. So after listening to all these concepts from the architect, the developer feels happy about the uniqueness of this concept, and he is fascinated about the variations of the idea of flexibility in mass housing, and starts thinking how to convert this into unique selling points in order to advertise or sell it to the potential clients and investors. So a few developers together hosts a housing symposium and invites potential investors, and he starts presenting these ideas in a more simpler way, where he prepares a chart showing the essential qualities in a more simpler manner. I would brief you through the key aspects of idea once more. So soft flexibility, it allows you to reconfigure both the services and the served spaces. Hard flexibility, it provides a limited freedom in deciding the plan layout. The supports theory, it recognizes the importance of involving community in the whole designing process alongside the individual control of the space. Whereas slack space, it allows you to occupy a space temporarily for an activity. And the open building concept focuses on the collaborative design, where it broadens the perspective of design and acknowledges that designing is a multifaceted process, and it includes different types of professionals. So after a series of presentations by developers, the symposium breaks into a smaller table discussions, and some of the interested audience have few comments and queries for the developer. I have actually tried to introduce these concepts to some of my students prior to the seminar, and they have come up with few questions, and they play the role of clients and I now play the role of developer.
I am interested in the flexible housing, but I would prefer a house in which I can adjust the spaces or the furniture around, and also preferably even add space according to my needs. So which option should I prefer in that case?
Then you need long-term flexibility, so you can either choose soft flexibility or the support systems where you can modify the space later.
I just want to rent a house for maybe 3 or 4 years, and I should be having enough space to be hosting guests for a house party. What do you think I should go for?
Then since you're looking for temporal flexibility, I think slack space would be a suitable option for you.
For the support systems, is the infill wall construction cost effective than the typical wet brick construction?
So the panel system used in the infill in the support structure, it costs more, but in the longer term, since you are able to just replace and reuse the same material, it saves on the costs when with respect to the wet systems.
In case of panels, what about security? Won't panels be like very easy to break into, and about issues of privacy like sound and so on?
So like we would think of using more advanced systems where the security doesn't directly depend on the material strength of the wall, whereas for the problem of sound, there is inbuilt insulation within the sandwich panels of the wall, so we don't have to go.
All these ideas sounds good, but in my house I don't have any mobile walls, or the plan organization is kind of fixed. But I still have spaces that is flexible. For example, the dining space is used for kitchen preparation. It is used as a dining space, or children sometimes use it as a study table. Then how are all these, why will I invest in such a new concept?
Honestly, I am also confused about that. So then the developer couldn't actually counter the statement what the client poses to him. And then he starts contemplating on the core essence of all these ideas of flexibility. And finally, he realizes that there is no one single option which satisfies all different type of users. And he goes back to the architect to discuss the feedback and the opinions what he made up after the symposium. And he asked the architect, how do you design buildings when decisions about users and their floor plans are not known and are usually decided by the users other than instead of the architect, and even these change inevitably over the course of time. But when I think of in a broader context about flexibility, I believe that a building is truly flexible if it can also serve for other functions which it has not essentially been designed for. Also, I would like to ask all of you, do you think that there is a necessity for any kind of flexibility in the context of Indian mass housing? And if yes, like what type of flexibility that I showed in the presentation do you think is relevant? Or if nothing is relevant? Let's discuss.
How would you like to relate these different types of flexibility that you talked of with questions of monotony that we were discussing? Do you see any overlaps, or do you look at it as a different topic altogether?
I think in a way, like since we are providing the option for the user in order to change certain aspects of the built environment, then over time, according to the decisions made by the users, it might also break monotony, or it might even create monotony if the lifestyles are converging and all the people decide and make similar decisions over time. But I think I see overlaps in terms of how decisions taken by the users could affect the discussions which we had on.
So in other words, you're saying that if my life is monotonous, if I'm using some flexible building type, my building will also be monotonous. And if my life is full of like ups and downs, kids being born, kids going away to college somewhere, or etc., then my house will also be. That if I use this system, it will be a true reflection of
it will
monotony in my life.
enable you to express.
Yeah, either monotony or non-monotony.
Yeah, it will just give a chance for you to express your lifestyle in the building.
I'm interested in the second part which you did in the presentation, that where you say that building is truly flexible if it can serve for other function it has not been specifically designed for. So it kind of relates back to the almost like the adaptive reuse sort of thing which Aanchal was also exploring in her presentation, where a building which can have housing functions incorporated into it, although it was not designed for housing from before. So in that way, like, so this is also me just throwing a question, but so do we specifically need to look for flexibility techniques which were shown in the presentation as something which needs to be incorporated to gain that sort of flexibility, or actually can functions be fit into places anyway? I mean, if you give them a broad enough flow data and just let them play, do you need to incorporate the techniques that you said?
Maybe like just a thought. When you say that you are introducing a new function into a building, and if the system by which that building is designed is like able to adapt it, then you would state that the building is flexible to the newer activities which people are forcing it, or like people are wanting that building to respond to. If not, then the building is not flexible, and hence people are demolishing buildings and then again making new buildings in order to satisfy the new functions.
So even if a building didn't have panels or the grid system that you were talking about where you can move around functions, if it had maybe large enough rooms with brick walls where we can move out a function and fit in another function, that will still be flexible housing. So that's what you say. It's not only just by these parameters.
It is not only by just these methods which you could achieve flexibility, it could also be something completely different. But I'm just questioning the need for it in the context of Indian high-rise mass housing, which we are focusing on.
You are saying you are questioning, meaning are you saying that it doesn't make sense? Are you saying that, or I don't understand that?
No, it like
Because so the narrative goes like this, that you are saying these are the different ways flexibility will be considered in housing. That's what you started out. You did mention the context of Ahmedabad. And you're leaving at the end with a question or almost a place you're saying, I'm questioning this. So what does it mean? What is the questioning indicate? What is it? I'm not able to understand. Can you explain?
okay, like I'm
So
questioning.
suppose if I disagree with something, I say I disagree, but I think this is possible, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know exactly. What does it mean? Questioning का मतलब क्या है?
I'm just trying to like gauge the relevance of these methods in Indian context and questioning it through and through that perspective whether are these relevant to the
So what do you
current.
think? I mean, is that what you're asking us, or you're telling us something?
So that's what I'm
What's
asking
your
opinion.
Right.
Yeah, what is your
What's your
What is your
personal
thought? I mean, I'm trying to understand because you studied this. It's very interesting. What is it? What do you think?
I think like the factor of if we forget the factor of cost
Yeah.
for sake of discussion, I think then it is.
okay, go ahead.
I think it makes sense to have flexibility in terms of housing in Indian context, where the lifestyles of the like the young population at least who are living in the urban housings, like they are changing, and people even who are trying to stay for a shorter period of time. I'm not talking very short, but maybe 5 to 10 years. If they choose to live in a certain location for that span of time, and if they have chance to adapt the space according to the change of lifestyle within that time span, it would be much more efficient than them moving all around the city within that time span. And hence I see a relevance
So
of
you're
this.
saying you would like flexibility to be built in into designs. That's what you like.
Yes,
That's what you
that's what my
If the
take
cost
on it
is
is.
forgotten. So I had a thought. I mean, I think the idea. So you embedded the discussion in Ahmedabad, right? You said this is. You kind of somehow thought Ahmedabad is developer, Ahmedabad, so contextualized. So what I wanted to add is the housing discussions are always contextual. Because when you say flexibility in a context versus a B context is very different. The whole notion of flexibility may change. So for example, in Scandinavian countries, what is flexibility versus what happens in India and what is flexibility? The value of flexibility. So I think it is good that you brought Ahmedabad, so then you can actually go back and say what does Ahmedabad mean, right? So in my opinion, just sharing my thoughts, Ahmedabad or some, let's say to a certain degree, Indian cities, they are all at a place in a scenario where people are yet coming into cities. There is just more people coming in, right? There's urbanization. We've heard this term, urbanization. Urbanization means more housing, period. People are more there. Sometimes they buy a house or they rent a house. So all those kind of things are happening. So the question of flexibility is far more limited when the developers are trying to do business. Right? And the people who say, I don't have time to engage in design negotiations, then I'm only interested in मेरे कितने रुपए पड़ेगा. So there is the whole section of housing. Now the flexibility question may increase when the housing goes from affordable to say very luxurious. So if they were providing 5 or 7 bedroom housing, for example, then the flexibility is a demand that the developer will be happy to cater to because it's affordable both ways. But as soon as you come lower down that rung, I think, let's say suppose 2 bedroom apartment, 1 bedroom apartment, 1 room kitchen, they'll say what flexibility? Give me my house. Something like that, I guess. That's my sense, right?
So you are telling it becomes
So
irrelevant
what-
at particular,
Irrelevant is not a good word, I think. Irrelevant to
less relevant in particular set of
relevant
user
in
group.
different contexts is what I say. And what happens here is that you, in an urban case, again, these are housing you're talking about, right? So as soon as that house has served its purpose for a particular user, there is an upward mobility that everyone expects. Why do people come to cities? People come to cities to grow economically, to grow any different ways, educate themselves, all that. So they might need a better house, they might need more ventilation, they might want bigger sizes of this. So they may move. So that is an assumption, it's a good assumption. It's not futile to think that it will actually make space for some other people who can afford this. Not such a great housing. I mean, not such great thing, not design, I'm not talking design per se. But any housing that doesn't provide flexibility in itself is not so bad. For say 1 bedroom, 1 room kitchen. Give me a standard house that works well. So if we talk about EWS housing, imagine flexibility. They don't have designers. They don't have designers at their disposal, right? I don't know, I'm just right? So the need for flexibility, the question of flexibility is much more contextual when you climb the ladder of housing, I guess, in India, in Ahmedabad. Yes. If that helps, I don't know. Your question, I'm just trying to share my perspective.
But I think that's the, I'm just guessing, what's happening is that looking at that here perhaps the flexibility is considered vital or useful for the exact opposite order, where we say that that perhaps that could be one of the tool or a system or a method through which the way in which people live might the space might become more useful or more versatile, whatever way you like. But I think that's the general challenge which always happens, where we say that this should be offered, that's the value, versus the market says no, that's the value. And that's again, that's the general conflict which usually is there, which is real. We can't really, architecturally we can always discuss, and as an ideology or as a offering one may have a different perspective, but where we want to implement this idea has a different kind of evaluation system.
I like the way he kind of went through the whole process and said that finally the developer gets all worked up and says कि तो सब कुछ अलग-अलग है, पागल हो जाओ. Let me just give 2 types and be done with it. That is what you kind of ended up with. So that is what probably developers do, because they think about it. They are trying to provide housing in time. People are taking loans for their housing. So there are so many realities associated with housing that it is governed by many other things addition to design. So like you were saying, design is an important, but they may want to standardize. They as in developers would like to standardize, because construction time can be managed better, right? As soon as you have something that is fixed, you can say ये time में हो जाएगा. Imagine changes happening at all different floors by different people. मेरा toilet इधर है, मेरा toilet उधर है, मेरा pipe यहाँ से जाएगा, मेरा pipe वहाँ से जाएगा. My God, that's amazing. But can you manage that? Can the developer be interested in such a thing? So again, I think these are interesting questions.
Like we have the same discussion by decontextualizing, like not taking the case of Ahmedabad.
Right.
But in general, like idea of flexibility, maybe not only in housing, but in any building. Like, what is the value that we associate with a building having this nature of flexibility, where it can adapt different functions into it?
Right now we're looking at flexibility majorly to change the lifestyle or to have a change in the function. But what we're also missing is when we bring flexibility into the picture, there's a lot of conflict that will come with it. Everyone will not agree to changing of a wall in a house to a certain degree. It would lead to a conflict that is not present when you hard and fast say that this is a wall and this is what you're going to get. But the moment you give that option of changing a wall or changing something in a house, it also changes the dynamics of people not agreeing to that change. Two people in the same family saying कि wall बढ़ाएगा या बढ़ाएगा. It could lead to a conflict, which I think could be a conflict throughout families. So we are also introducing that conflict into the lifestyle.
Are you saying there are no conflicts right now?
No, I'm saying we're adding one more.
If we are like
Adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
No, maybe refocusing on somewhere. So like if there is some other burning issue, now we will focus on this rather than.
But since these are being discussed, I would like to tie it to what we were discussing in the last presentation also. I think it's a question of value and not cost. And when we look at different contexts, whether it is Ahmedabad or Mumbai or even someone in a class difference, low income versus high income, what is very fascinating in a growing economy is that the richer your, so value I define as quality divided by cost of achieving that quality. The richer you are, your expectation of quality increases because you think I have money and therefore I can demand, not afford, but demand that additional quality, and I'm willing to throw that money. And conversely, when I'm extremely poor, on one hand I don't have the money, so the denominator is lower. But there is also an acceptance that because I don't have money, I cannot ask for that same quality. So if I convert your cost, because you said that if you keep cost aside, I think instead if you ask questions of how will it add value differently to a very high-end flat versus a low-end flat, how you will have to look at cost increase due to flexible. Like for example, in one of the examples you said that I can put the toilet anywhere, which is why he said that, oh my god, if everyone's pipe is going everywhere, I can't think of the amount of additional cost, right? But then I have to ask the question, what quality, how much quality and improvement I am getting for that additional cost I am putting in, which will tell me the actual value of the flexibility. Which might be different for a rich person and a poor person, right? A poor person will be much more cost conscious. But what is also fascinating about a developing economy is that to some extent this notion that at any point in time the house that I have is not the ideal house. The assumption of a lot of people in society is that I will move on to a better house. Today I can afford only this much. Tomorrow I will go into a better house. So somewhere my current condition is always seen as a stopgap condition. I am wondering, that's why again, is it that if I compare with Europe, which is where all of these projects are, the demand for quality or flexibility is much higher. Because I think that I have already arrived and therefore I want the best. And in a perverse way, a lot of societies today willing to accept less because they think that tomorrow I will become richer and move on to something better. But then I'm wondering, are we then saying that we have to design some in terms of quality, not cost, poor houses and some which houses, because that's how society is, right? They are constantly moving to imagine a scenario where all houses are the best. I'm not saying size, floor finish, whatever that best is best. Then where do I move on to?
No, I think what you were saying is very interesting because in Europe, for example, some countries, people will choose a house based on their need. Connectivity in terms of their jobs or some other criteria such as that. So size is a function of what they need. It is not a function of how much money they have. Now that has happened because the quality of housing across different types, like what we were saying, is similar.
Yeah,
the quality
is similar.
Here I think we have huge disparity
in terms of
the economical capacities, I guess. That's what we're dealing with in India, right? Because we are dealing with people who are moving out of slums and trying to find a house. And people on the spectrum. So that is where I guess our housing is our Ahmedabad, because it has a question to deal with. But I think it's a, like you say, fascinating question that how it eventually changes to a place where all housing is made beautifully or with value that is similar. That doesn't count how much money, but says how much do I need.
But the way, let's say for example, the way if we look at right now, we are looking at literature vocabulary, or one would say a secondary vocabulary of what one may call slack versus soft versus. Those are not our terms. Those are a term which somebody might have put up for some reason. Could be anything. And if we forget that, but more or less those things are still talking about what eventually a user will get. It is still like somebody will be able to do this, somebody will be able to do that, you can do that. What if I put the same chart using that, what an investor and a developer will get? I still look at it as a personal, let's say, because I want to push that. I know I'll take care of my user, or I will wish to do it as much as possible. But I still, when I'm presenting to the investors, I'll put a chart what they would like to see. But if I say do charity, they'll not do charity. Because eventually it becomes and usually when we talk about, we end up putting anything as a do this social, this. That's not, there's no social work in business. Because they are, it's a serious business. And they are good people. See, we know that it's not like everybody does not want to suck the blood of people and then be rich. It's not like that.
There are good and bad people everywhere. NGOs and every business.
There are good architects, or there are bad, there are horrible architects. So we have them. We know them.
Don't start
but it's not that's not a question here. The question is how do we, I think that's the problem generally where the whole tug of war is that what you find value in, how do you really bring that to the value of somebody else also, and then have that ground as multiple people getting multiple things or their own things. Otherwise what will happen, it will become my agenda to introduce a flexibility. I will do a project, but that will not get repeated. That will not become average. It will still stay for, and I'll still be getting award for that. That will still happen, which is happening in those projects. Many of them. And that's why, so like if you want to search 3 more projects like that, you'll not find it. So if somebody else is doing this exercise next semester, you will still stick to the same 5 examples, or maybe 1 or 2 more, but you'll not find 30 examples like that, because it is difficult. And that's why it is not average. What it was like where we see average quality versus this or the disparity. So I think the whole general challenge for a designer, or when you want to put something into market, is that how do somebody else get this thing out of it, so that people actually put their money, so that it becomes average.
So actually I thought you were going to do that. No, we had a discussion that actually there should be 3 columns: developer, architect and end user. what is in it for everyone? Because the same thing, since we are talking as architects, as an architect, I think it is easy to talk of a way of making flexibility which is costly. Many of, like you rightly pointed out, a lot of these theoretical examples where there are some built examples also are examples where flexibility is coming at 10% premium cost. I think there is nothing, unfortunately there is nothing in it for the architect to try and work out a flexible system at no additional cost.
But flexibility inherently has a cost. I mean, if we just forget about it, even housing, if you say you have something, you have this, oh, it can do something more. If it can do something more, it will be cost to it. If you say that it can open up like this, so it's flexible. If there is a partition that actually can be, you can slide the partition, it's more expensive than a fixed partition. So in that sense, any flexibility has some added cost like this. There is no, I don't think there's two ways about it. Flexibility inherently. So whatever that is, suppose you say we are going to give you an open floor plan, make your own walls. That's flexibility, but that does not give people what they need really. So they need to build walls, they need to do. So there is a cost, there is an additional cost is what I'm saying. Then they have to hire a mason, they will have to deal with all of those kind of jhamela, I would say, right? The developer will say, so I'm just wondering as in housing, and again the context of Indian mass housing, that's what your question is located in. In that case, is flexibility a question now? Maybe some years down the line. Maybe so you'll have to keep questioning it every year maybe. Is it time? Is it time?
Or do we present the best and then, like how we were discussing in the earlier discussion, and then people start aspiring for it, and then it might become a new common.
It's like Marie Antoinette said, let them have cake. Is what he is arguing, that they were starving
to some extent, to whatever extent, at least what we wish, whatever seems visual and whatever seems empty, doing, or that much flexibility we already experienced. So like you see an apartment being used as office, this, that, it's there. If you see a row house, you'll see a full-fledged thing getting done, whatever, and you'll see multiple. And most of the, why we like Aranya is that, no? Like lot of things happening up and down, LIC, whatever, any example that you'll see an illegal thing also happening into apartment, you'll see a most formal thing happening into apartment, this, that. वो तो हो रहा है, without added cost. I mean, there is a cost, there is a cost, but you will see range of things being, if you read a newspaper, you know that this is being being done at 6th floor of this, yes, whatever, no, good and bad both. So there are, I think, 3 or 4 people who are growing full-fledged, large-scale microgreens into an apartment, a regular apartment. So do we, in that case, the question I am asking to myself that what is my role, my personal role into that? If people are smart enough to manage their side,
there is one more
without added cost. I am saying that
role that he identified interestingly, that whose role is it to say flexibility chahiye ke liye?
Yeah.
Whose role is it? Is it the architect's responsibility? See, the architect can design as per something, right? A brief, let us say. But who defines that there is a need for flexibility? Who do we think is the person or an agency that defines? The user, a developer, or an architect? What do you guys think?
I was thinking, like, for example, apartments, if you find they are restrictive in that design because they're already pre-designed and given to us, whereas plots on a ground allow us as users to design. What if, like, if a flexible option is introduced, but even since they're given that, people also have a preconceived notion of preconceived lifestyle that they've lived and come. So would a person given a flexible choice, tend to go back to the same, or would they on their own be able to think something completely different? because as architects we are exposed to different kinds of lifestyle or other things that we can introduce and we find maybe are good. But as users, since we've already lived a lifestyle, I'm just thinking if we would tend to still do that same thing, or would we on our own be able to think it differently?
Yeah, I think some of the theories of flexibility do talk about this, that whether we are promoting flexibility so that differences can be created, or is it just we are giving them affordance, and then whether people do it or not do it is entirely people's call. But anyways, I think in the interest of time, maybe.
Can I just say
Yeah, sure.
So you were saying how flexible, whenever a thing is flexible or a product does something more than its function, it becomes more costly. There is that factor added to it. But when you look at the chores of Mumbai, they are more flexible than a 2 BHK or a 1 BHK or a 3 BHK. So I think it's more about when we formalize flexibility and we look at it from a more formal perspective, like how we had done about soft flexibility, hard flexibility. Then there is this cost factor that comes to it. But by innate nature, we say that अगर कुछ करना है तो हम जुगाड़ कर लेते हैं. So that notion of flexibility is something that's in our nature, irrespective of whether it's formalized or informal.
I think the moment you start asking it in terms of quality or cost, I would say in the chawl of Mumbai, for the money that I can afford, the design gives me the best possible quality. It's not that I desire that kind of quality. I would love to have a private bedroom and a separate living room. But at that cost, in that chawl, if I make a wall, then the quality of the individual room becomes terrible. So I am letting go of that much quality because that's the cost I can afford.
The whole question of formality is also important. What you are saying is that as soon as when you make anything formal, there is also cost. So informal vending has lesser cost on street. When you say that we are going to organize this space where you are going to rent very properly, obviously we charge more money because now we are giving you water supply, now we are giving you lights. So it is, housing deals with this, I think, that it is, as soon as you say that it is organized, that value is somehow lost. That's a good point.
Right, shall we move on to the next one? No, it's good that we are discussing a lot and I'm happy that we are doing. So in the context of how we have been progressing, like I said, the morning session was about monotony and banal, and so Santan asked questions about flexibility and therefore one way of dealing with monotony. I think Isha is going to go one step further and ask, as an architect, how to stack.
So hello everyone, my name is Isha and I've taken up this opportunity to address the question, how do you stack potential and perspectives in mass housing? Since ages ago, we as a species have entertained a common fascination for verticality, the act of stacking being a method to achieve it. Unlike the ancient fascination that emerged from this desire to try reaching the heaven, which might still persist, most of us would agree that now it is a demand of the new age. Burgeoning population, paired with finite land and the urgent need to accommodate everyone, has led us to look at the process of stacking in the most efficient and functional way possible. Our topmost priority is to house most number of people in the least area possible, all the while keeping in mind profitability. Before moving further, to loosen up our mainstream image of stacking, let me define stacking for you. To stack is to arrange things in an ordered pile, heap or mount. And therefore here I ask the questions. To stack is to only go vertical. What happens when you stack different volumes, floor plates or even styles? Can similar examples, intending to create unique experiences in going vertical, be translated in mass housing? Let us try exploring our own notions of conventional and unconventional stacking. Try imagining the most banal way of stacking and hold that image in mind for a while. Alongside that image comes Howell's moving castle. All of it screams unconventional. It is a mad stack of served and service spaces with varied openings and an unimaginable internal path connecting the different forms. Not only is this unique abode moving and flying, but it also has machine parts jutting out and expelling smoke, highlighting that a house is a living, breathing machine. For some, it might appear like a massive mess, but the interesting thing to note is that the stack does not reveal everything. The interior is excitingly undecipherable, and the exterior unfolds not all at once. Against the backdrop of stacked housing, Howell's moving castle operates in a dual manner. It seems to have an interesting relationship with its context. When flying in the air, the stack itself is isolated from the land. When it settles at a particular location, it has the possibility of extending and establishing a built or an unbuilt relation with the ground. How about the burrow in Harry Potter? The stacking of the house stands as a metaphor for the growing and changing needs of a family. It might seem usual for the Weasleys, but this unconventional stacking holds boundless possibilities. It physically expands and contracts vertically and horizontally to cater to the evolving lives of the family. You can observe the whole house as the sum of its individual forms. The stack is a work in process which displays the various stages and the process of making a house over time. And now the reality of our world. The same floor plate stacked exactly on top of each other for as high as possible. A dwelling is a personal space belonging to an individual or a collective. The exclusive nature of a dwelling makes the individual experience inevitably different. However, when looking at it through a zoomed out lens, it is not only monotonous for the viewers but equally boring and repetitive for the residents. Every resident living in an apartment experiences the same and follows the same path to reach their house. Not only is each house a world in itself, but it invariably lends itself to the larger picture of the society we live in. This led me to ask the question, how can we as architects, keeping well in mind the contingencies of reality, challenge the banal stacking, propose innovative and impactful ideas to provide better housing? An aim to explore variations in stacking and a lingering curiosity to imagine what it might feel to live inside a Tetris game resulted in what I named Stackabout, a stacking game. The game experiment was designed with 5 objectives: to explore variations in stacking within a simple structure, to use different types of dwellings in one stack, unlike the usual vertical repetition of a house, to compare and understand the potential and limitations of different types of dwellings, to explore the variations possible in a stack using only one type of dwelling, to use the game as a tool to come up with strategies and concepts that can be used at mass housing scale. Stackabout 3.0, the current version of the game, is a combination of the previous two versions. Maximum 8 to 12 pieces of one type and a cylinder are given. The rules are that you cannot change the pieces, not even rotate the pieces, as in one cube. Every piece needs to have at least one square face directly attached to the cylinder. No pieces stacked directly on top of each other can be in the same plane, and no two pieces can have the same orientation. Here the cylinder is mandatory to use in this version, and different winning criteria were given. The result was that majority of the people who played the game thought that the L, Z and T pieces were easiest when compared to other pieces, and equal number of people thought that the easiest piece to stack between these three was the L or the T piece. So here are some results of the game played. The first two images saw different proportions of entries and enclosures getting formed similar to Vikra house. The staggered profile in the third example can be mirrored to add more housing blocks like in Walton 7. And some examples saw the rotation of the exact same floor plate to form niches and create external as well as internal variation. Here in the first two images again, the interlocking of different pieces resulted in voids and different sizes of exposed surfaces which could be used as terraces and balconies. As the stacking can see a play of different pieces coming together at different levels, these terraces can then be accessed by different people from different levels to form communal spaces if wanted. The next two images observe a mound-like profile similar to that of Habitat 67. The rule of directly attaching to the cylinder resulted in much compact style of stacking. If allowed to have extended horizontal circulation, the stack can proliferate similar to Walden 7. In the second image, cantilevering the form opens up the idea of integrating the existing with the built. Here the winning criteria is the most exposed stack wins. The first image is a stack of a piece in all three axes, whereas the example besides it is with a Z piece. Both of them explore different orientations of the same piece. Something similar is seen in unitary habitation, where two L-shaped volumes are interlocked to provide double height spaces, and the circulation corridor is tucked in the center. The bottom images resemble the concept of attaching individual pieces to a central core, similar to Nakagen Tower. All these possibilities to the right show how exposed surfaces can be used functionally or to get light and ventilation. These different levels can be used for different activities. This can be used as a strategy to design hybrid buildings with more than one program. For example, residential or commercial, or residential and urban farming. Here the winning criteria was to have at least one facade aligned. The strategy can be used to mirror the building and proliferate further, or to build in a situation where you have limitations on one side. For example, ROCO housing by Tadawan. Another criteria is least surface area of the cylinder used. The game saw explorations of exposing the cylinder and investigating how that affected the stacking of the blocks. And finally, one more strategy of using the least ground area, which can be used in tight site contexts, thereby exploring different forms above ground. This brings us to the different ways of playing stackabout. In the first iteration, instead of using 4 cubes to make one piece, 3 or 5 or more cubes can be used. In the second iteration, the same rules as stackabout 3.0 will apply, but the winning criteria can change. For example, only 50% of the down-facing surface area of a piece can be exposed to limit extreme cantilevering or to even maximize voids. The third option, the pieces can be stacked without the cylinder. The stack that requires these number of cylinders to connect all the pieces together wins. And the fourth option can be a planar game of Tetris. The stack of minimum surfaces closed off wins the game. I would like to conclude by zooming out of the game and circling back to the initial theme of stacking with some questions to think about. In a high-rise apartment, does the repetition of a house discourage expression of individual identity? Do you feel isolated from the ground in mass housing? How can stacking strategize to provide a sense of groundedness? What is the future of stacking? Is irregular stacking, which intends to break monotony, doing the exact opposite, that is creating a new style, sense of monotony, that is chaos and confusion? And now I would like to invite some volunteers to play the game.
So we can start discussing while, or what is your
We
plan?
can start discussing while.
No, whatever you have planned.
I can have 4 people, like total of 4 people to play the game at one time.
Maybe if they face audience.
Yeah, maybe. Anyways, everyone is not playing, right?
I can have 4 people
Yeah,
play that.
sure.
Any of the masters students.
Let someone start playing, others will join in. So I've been telling that she should patent the game in
That about the name at least.
the name also, you're right? The name also. No, I think in this day and age where actually most of the apps, they collect data from you to get, so I think if a lot of people are playing the game and she's getting all the data about
Yeah,
how to stack, you're getting free
Yeah.
data. But I really like I think some of the rules that you talked of at the end, minimum 50% underside exposed or living, yeah. I think if you can strategically make like a few games, different games that I can play with this, each which tells me how to, like you're saying, reduce cantilever cost or have all my ducts. So right now I'm assuming your pipes are actually vertical circulation.
They can be used as vertical circulation as well, and also as service.
Service duct.
Yeah. Okay, so we're doing only one.
Who is doing a one-player game?
Okay, so you can go if you choose one. So you can. So I'm giving only one type of piece to them both.
What I like about this program is
Yeah.
but I like the fact that, for example, she just said, I'm giving you only one piece.
Yes.
So who is she? So that those are architects.
Yes.
Are architects trying to do something like that, but she's someone.
Yes.
Yes. That's a good question
Yeah,
for
that's
all of us. Like, who is this person?
Who is the designer of this game?
Yeah. Who is the person?
And so, in fact, I'm
And
even.
if we recognize, and if we, then it's a game.
It's a game.
You play earnestness, and I love the idea of how.
And I think that means that each card, which is the rule, she read it from one card which says, I will give you only one piece. Each card I'm imagining is designed for a context, housing context. कि कहीं पे cost का card है, कहीं पे regulation का card है, कहीं पे it's a developer who wants to do a one-off project where which will build my image or identity, brand establish करना है उसका card है. Depending on how the cards are designed, I think it's all in the design of the cards, right?
So who designed the cards?
Yes.
And
who decides when to
if
play?
architects understand that idea, that in some sense, like these architects sitting there, they are merely responding to the things designed by someone else.
So they are accepting कि वो कार्ड तो मुझे मिला है, वो कार्ड के हिसाब से ही खेलना है. ये प्रोजेक्ट में मैं कोई और कार्ड नहीं यूज कर सकता. हर प्रोजेक्ट, every game cannot have all the cards.
Every game does not mean that you have to see cards everywhere.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
there are so many.
Simple but very clear message.
So Swar has a piece like this, which is on 3 axes.
Yes.
And Adril's piece. And Swar also has a L in 3D.
3D L.
Yeah. And the winning criteria, that is their intention is to use least surface area of the cylinder to attach. When they attach.
Everyone should attach, but
Yeah.
least surface area.
Why is that?
Because if I'm considering this as vertical circulation and each piece to be one dwelling, then for accessibility.
No, so why least? Why not maximum?
Okay. One is like a design perspective to have the circulation exposed so that light and ventilation can be taken and not have it in the center wherein it's dark and closed off. Do you want to read the rules
Some
again?
sort of a design in mind. When there is a preconceived idea that she has that because she wants an outcome similar to something.
So I think right now I would say that right now what you have not been able to transcend is when you are designing the cards, you are thinking like an architect.
These cards.
So वो architect का bias, which is also fascinating. It's very
No, but I think this is what is giving us you guys the opportunity to talk about the fact that the cards don't necessarily always belong to you.
Yes.
They come. Projects have different cards that you need to play with.
Yeah. So I'm imagining that a similar game could be if you're saying that I've given you who can stack the most number of units. Of course, the rule is one face has to touch the vertical, right? So if the card said that, you can play because the rule is different.
3 minutes to
Sure.
I mean, the edges, what is the major, how much edge can be exposed to the outside? If we count that,
Yes.
that's the maximum.
Yes.
Then you win. Or
Yeah.
that talks about the view or
Yes.
navigation, talks about something.
So actually the design of the cards is everything. I mean, each card tells me. I'm just wondering if this were, if it was easy to make it an app. I know 3D stacking on an app is difficult physically because then you can actually collect data.
बहुत सारे
बहुत data
बहुत फटाफट आ जाए
Free games सब लोग खेलेंगे and you get data of, like you're saying with shape. So interestingly, right now if all are 4 module ke units, so you have decided 2 BHK or whatever depending on what the module is. I can also once I say I will make 3 module ke blocks and 4 module ke blocks and 1 module ke blocks and then ask which works, which is most efficient or which combination of modules is.
So they can do 3 competitions, no? One that says maximum wins. So maximum number of 3 wins.
Yes.
So that's another competition.
Yes,
In
yes.
some sense that out of the 3, 2 and 1, you say कि जितने 3 हो सके उतना करना है, लेकिन everything के बाद एक तो करना ही. I don't know, those kind of interesting rules.
So actually what is happening ever since they started doing this, मेरे दिमाग में तो cards ही आ रहा है कि कितने मैं cards design कर सकता हूँ to give me different understandings, analysis because that way the game is beautiful. It's only one module, पर उसमें से games बहुत निकलते हैं.
But I think what you said is very, what I am at least thinking is that sometimes we misread that as architects, where the design of the card themselves becomes like a big idea for us. That shouldn't be the case. As an architect, you don't control that too much. That it is the market sometimes, it is the local context sometimes, the local regulation sometimes, the developer, like you were saying, trying to do something sometimes. So all of those are some criteria, but I think the game then, as an architect, can you play well? Do you know the putting together of this really well? That is the skill, that is the, I mean, that'd be fun.
So maybe if I study different contexts, like when you were saying, I was thinking, imagine riverfront पे कोई project बन रहा है. So the game I play is that you have to stack 40 blocks or parts, but each block should have one face facing a designated side. सारे बाजू block stack हो रहे हैं, but every house has one window opening to the river side. So if I imagine different hypothetical contexts, types of contexts, I might end up designing cards for those. Sorry, you were saying.
No, I mean, yeah, when we, similar to when we get into the, other than winning the game, the moment you get fixated to designing the card, another trouble that happens is you were professionally supposed to deliver something, but your ego tells you to do something else, and then you get engaged into that, and then you fall flat over there, you do very bad work, which you are actually supposed to do. Which means you never get to design a car. So design or influence a car. I mean, which also happens. People who have done projects which we now aspire and see continuity. Somewhere I think they have also they had a say in writing that script of the car, or they may have influenced or maybe gained a capacity where now I can. So that also comes from a lot of work experience.
It does it mean that suppose that the card would have that have been sort of dished out to you, you say that this plus more without additional cost, the change happens. So as a designer, if you can say this minimum,
this minimum,
I give you this
is
like whatever rules that
so it's not winning. It's not winning. It is by default.
No, winning is done. I'm giving you more without any additional. That is where the change starts happening in the market. I mean, that's what you're saying.
Else it's like we 40 people will say ye wo falana.
So good architects try to do that. I think that's what you're saying.
No, I would say.
I think that's what I understand.
It's not about good or bad. I think.
try and say that your minimum is obvious. I will give you that.
Yes. You
But
can't.
I'll give you something additional that probably it's not kind of yet needed maybe or understood properly. And can I sort of infuse this into the design without any additional implication to the bottom line or whatever?
So I'll build 5. First of all, I'll build 5 games, and then on the 6th game, I'll say let's look at the first one, and then I might for 5 games I'll not say it. I just do the so that again the way in which any business works, you build a trust. You know that what you say will be valued, will not be like, which also happens. We want to be more, lot of times we want to be more known than the other person. We want to have that. Doesn't work.
So also I think the other way or the other thing we could be saying with this is that the fun of the game is in playing by the rules of the game, right?
Understand them.
Yeah. Maybe at some stage when the game evolves a lot, maybe the game designer realizes that one rule is creating lot of limitations in the fun of playing the game. Only then the game designer has to
change.
So if for example I play a game with 3 vertical courts and 3 blocks and also introduce rules of distance between blocks, maybe through playing this game I realize that one bylaw is severely limiting the possible iterations of the game.
Or one structural system.
One
is not
system,
allowing
something
this.
is, because to me an ideal game is like for example chess, just 8 squares and only 16 pieces, but the rules are written in such a way that theoretically also there are infinite possibilities of how the game results evolves. So even till date it's only the first 7 or 10 moves which have been mapped as never having occurred. So even today when games are played by the 13th move, they start saying this game has never been played. This move has or this configuration has never. To me that's the beauty of writing the rules well, that the rules are minimum. It doesn't make the playing of the game monotonous. So trick is
it's an ideal sort of, it almost says that imagine regulations. Imagine regulations which are like this, that allow you to get what you want, but follow only those minimums.
Yes.
That they are not a hindrance of some sort.
And the rules in that sense are very deterministic in a negative way, by which I mean the chess says ki the knight or the queen can only move like this. So the person making the rule is able to ensure that the queen will not move like this. So if the rules are to prevent certain, say if the rules are to prevent windowless rooms or without ventilation, or the rules are to prevent fire spreading across the building, I can make specific rules of prevention, which is what the chess game does, but it does not limit the iterations of the game. So in a negative sense it's deterministic, in a positive sense it allows infinite combinations. I mean but it's very hard to get there. But I think the game is a good way of trying to get there.
Because game means that there are rules now. Because it engages more people than one.
Yeah.
Because in a game, I play a game alone. It's not a game. I don't win, I don't lose. So when you say that I want to engage with more people, and then you need a rule. So in that sense, anything you want to do with more people need rules. I think that's what it's coming to, right? Because without rules, you cannot organize people together. So housing, in that sense, it's a very relevant situation here. That you are asking the question of stacking. but we are not talking about that. We're talking about the whole idea of game again, which is like evocative.
So what like the designing regulations? Like I had to come up with.
Yeah, you are actually you designed the regulations of the game. That's true.
You are a planner.
Yeah, now that
I'm saying that
it's not necessary.
not necessarily an architect.
Yeah.
Of the particular building that is being designed there.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. So you are an architect who has said that I am more interested in the outcomes that these silly architects come up with. Right? I am not interested in designing buildings anymore. Therefore, I will design rules that the outcomes are much more defined and valuable. Like that's how it works.
So
I mean-
policy maker.
Policy-
In that case, she's a policy maker.
Yeah, she's designing regulations.
But also I think very often, especially when we are, all of us are doing
And good
housing
architects can
studios-
make regulations about that. So,
Yeah, of course.
I'm not suggesting that.
Yeah, you can't get it. But what I was saying was, very often, especially when we are doing housing studios, even before we have played the game enough number of times, we start laying the blame on the rules of the game.
Yes.
कि मुझे चेस खेलना नहीं आता तो मैं rules blame
एक
करता हूँ.
भी नशा नहीं चला रहता तो अच्छा होता.
So, no, sometimes the problem might be in the rules, fair enough. But only after you have played the game enough number of times within the rules, you reach a level where you realize कि ये rule में problem है. But there is something about us that when we start doing housing projects, बहुत जल्दी हमको लगने लगता है कि ये bylaw अगर change हो जाए.
पहले हमें सब छोड़ देना, फिर बाकी बात करेंगे. ऐसा बोल रहे हैं.
हाँ,
so that
कि
is not the-
उसके बगैर हो नहीं सकता.
हाँ,
No,
this is the problem.
तोड़ना है उसमें. I have no issue if we want we at the end of the studio say that we want to change this one by
Fair enough.
पर वो खेलने से पहले if you want to change it because it is पहले गेम के पहले स्टेप में ही वो
So the
रूल
best
नड़ता
thing
है.
is to play the game with the given rules 10 times and all the 10 times identify, look,
Yes.
this is the
Yes.
problem.
Yes.
Look
yes.
at that. Second
Yes.
time, that's a problem. Third time, I changed that. Still that's a problem. And then you can communicate to someone that there is a problem.
Yeah.
Change.
And the second thing is actually even, I mean, to me game is a very good example of that कि rules के साथ भी you can have creativity and fun with rules.
Yes.
Because that's the other sort of bottleneck even I have as when I was studying or even now as an architect that in a creative field rules are a inhibiting factor.
Perception wise, you mean.
Huh?
It's a perception.
It's a perception. I mean, I think it, to some extent, fair enough. I think it comes from the art domain of architecture that if you tell a painter before they start a painting कि ये rules है painting के, they will ask why. If there are inherent rules with the chemical of the paint, fair enough. I will play with it, but don't impose. So somewhere, and I'm saying fair enough, somewhere in our education of architecture, this idea that the lesser the rules, the more fun we can have, or the better the architecture we can produce, is an implicit thing that comes through our education. I just want us to be aware of it. ज़रूरी नहीं है. There might be rules which make the game much more fun than a no rules game.
Actually, it's a. I feel that I mean I extending your idea that often having some rules is actually an extremely simple context for people, right? Because it's like constraints. Imagine a project without constraints. Imagine a client coming to you and saying, just make something.
Yeah.
I mean, then you don't know what to do, right? I mean, that's what I feel at least. So I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
sharing my perspective. But so rules of the game, in the sense context or something
Yeah.
else, allow you to design something to that, a little more oriented to that. So, which is interesting. However, as a general motion, I see that किसी को रूल चाहिए. I will put it like that.
हाँ.
किसी को रूल.
Unless you are making the rules.
So no one likes rules, right? ये studio इसी में चलाना है, रात को 12 बजे बंद हो जाएगा, whatever rules. Do people don't like that? But they are.
Yes.
But then the irony is then on the other side we are talking about efficiency of food and the cost. It's like if you want to have a something outcome which is efficient, where you reach on a time. As we said, whether in the form of constraint in terms of budget, time, everything put together. If you want to reach there, you have to have that. So maybe if we have a set of rules which makes the building affordable, or a set of rules which makes the building well lit, where we say comfort is the outcome, or the luxury is the outcome. This is the outcome, or a landmark is an outcome. And for each, there could be 5 rules which are common, and then there are 2 or 3 which are talking it out, which is specifically designed for, again, to achieve a flexibility, for example, in the lower segment of the housing. Then it's again like you just put that and then let it govern in whatever extent. Or one may say that no, actually the smaller houses have these kind of hygiene problems or general maintenance issues or whatever. I will try and regulate to that. Probably if a rule can happen, work out or to prevent that, not to limit it. Then I think then everybody is playing their own game. Everybody knows which game I am playing. Otherwise, I am playing a game of an icon, making an iconography at the affordable segment. Then again, I am like doing 2 different things at 2 different places, unnecessarily, which we also do. But your cylinder is in the relationship to the module, or you have just put it? वो होना नहीं चाहिए. Like if
Why
a
is it a
cylinder,
cylinder?
if you are saying like either it's a circulation or a service, it should be in proportion to the module that you are giving. Otherwise, my basis of game is wrong.
ये वो क्या है? सबको गेम डिजाइन करने का मन कर रहा है. सिलेंडर क्यों? अभी तो वो पाइप उसको इजीली
पूछने का आप आगे क्यों? आप खाली गेम खेलो.
That could be the answer. That's the answer.
No one gets to design the game.
Yes. No, but the planner of the game should have carefully thought of the diameter of the cylinder.
Comment on that, of course.
With the relationship of the dimension of the mass.
But right now it's not just like a, let's say, dog-legged.
No, not the form. I'm just saying
scale. But it can have
the players, after having played 10 times, will ask questions. Remember
that? Yes.
They will say कि ये क्या सिटी सा
हो
सकता है. Come back.
Stack about 4.0. Actually, that's how it happened. No, she did one. Some people actually played the game and they asked lot of. बार game खेल के सवाल खड़े हो गए. So stack
That's a
about.
good process. That's a participatory process. If you see.
Yeah.
Engaging.
That's how she came to stack about 3. One was
Rules also change.
the rules changed because she saw people playing the game and the outcome of the game she had not anticipated. तो उसने भी rules change किए. So I think it's a very fascinating sort of documentary of how I hope people who are making rules also
think like this,
see what is happening. कि मेरे rules की वजह से ये बनालिटी या मोनोटनी ये इशू आ रहा है तो हम 2.0 में we will change.
A lot of interesting messages.
Okay.